So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there are things surrounding this Moscow attack that just aren't adding up. A lot of it has to do with Putin's speech that he gave to the Russian people after this attack. And he did talk about how they've detained 11 people, 4 of which were the actual gunmen that acted in the attack. And unfortunately, at this point, 133 people have died. But there were a lot of discrepancies between what Putin is saying, what the media is saying, what is the known intelligence, and I'm going to address some of that here. I'm not going to agree with specific conspiracy theories, but I'll float my own theory at the end, which is based on basically what is the most simple explanation. But Moscow is one of the most heavily surveilled and policed cities in the world. Protesters can't even hold up a sign that says no war for more than a minute or two before they are arrested. But these ISIS gunmen suddenly had a window of opportunity to casually walk around a concert venue, go on a rampage, and it took police something like 30 minutes to respond. That's a bit weird to me. The Russian media then leapt at this Ukrainian license plate theory, and then it turned out that this was actually a Belarusian license plate. Even so, in a war with Ukraine, I highly doubt people will just be driving around Russia with Ukrainian license plates. The fact that it is Belarusian plates and this was the van that many of these gunmen used at that time is very strange. Putin also claimed the assailants had been trying to escape via Ukraine, saying, quote, according to preliminary data, a window for them to cross to the state border was prepared by the Ukrainian side. Putin's arguments that the suspects were heading to the Russian-Ukrainian border makes no sense. Russia has 20,000 kilometers of borders. Why would they head to the one place where the Russian army and the Russian Federal Security Service forces are most concentrated? And how does Ukraine prepare a window when these gunmen were in Russia? Ukraine has no control over what is taking place in Russia and what is essentially a very heavily monitored wartime border. Such a window would be under Russian control. Furthermore, in Putin's speech, he didn't mention ISIS at all. Not once. And this despite the fact that ISIS has now shared 2 statements claiming responsibility and also showed pictures. He ended up doubling down on Ukraine. Not only has Ukraine denied involvement, multiple Western intelligence agencies have said none of the intelligence points to connections to Ukraine. Mohammad Faizov, one of the alleged attackers, has a VK account that goes back for years, and he has no ties to Ukraine at all. He was in fact from Tajikistan. A thorough search of social media accounts of the supposed terrorists caught by Russia shows they don't have any connection to Ukraine. Nonetheless, there are also discrepancies in this ISIS theory as well. Russia has shared a video featuring one of the supposed terrorists who claims to have traveled to Russia from Turkey with the promise of receiving about 500,000 rubles, which is about $5,000 for his task. He was told, kill people regardless of who they are. That is not the MO of ISIS. In fact, when Russia invaded Ukraine and was seeking recruits, ISIS distanced himself from the Ukraine war, saying, let the infidels fight each other. Furthermore, the payout is kind of weird here. Yes, ISIS does do payouts for major attacks like this, but they're often in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, not $5,000. Maybe these men were desperate, though. The United States last week issued public statements that a major terrorist attack inside Russia was imminent. So that means there are 3 possibilities here for Russia. The United States just has better intelligence gathering methods inside of Russia than Russia's own intelligence agencies, and Russia's intelligence agencies completely failed, or Russian intelligence had the exact same information the United States did about this terrorist attack and they did nothing to stop it on purpose, or they actually didn't know and just truly didn't believe the US. All of these options are pretty bad for Russia. And Putin is in a bit of a pickle here. He went on TV and told the Russian people, essentially the US is making up terrorist threats to undermine Russia's stability. 2 weeks later, this happens. So now all of Russia is like, WTF, Putin, you said it is nothing to worry about, and it is a misinformation campaign, and here we are looking at glaring evidence that indicates this was ISIS or ISIS-K attacking our people. So why is Putin so adamant about this being a Ukraine attack then? Well, Putin has no choice but to blame Ukraine because the alternative is showing that he has lost control of his security apparatus. The one thing authoritarian dictators absolutely must provide to remain legitimate is security and stability, especially from outside aggressors. Whether it is Ukrainian attacks into Belgorod or ISIS attacks in Moscow, Putin is increasingly failing in that endeavor. and much of that is due to his own policies. Additionally, admitting that it was ISIS means ISIS must be dealt with. Putin wants to avoid needing to take action against the actual perpetrator, most likely ISIS or ISIS-K or ISIS-KP, which is based in Afghanistan. Largely, this is a resource problem for him. Efforts to track down the backers of these attackers and where they come from, as well as push to destroy their cells in possibly Afghanistan, takes away from Ukraine. Putin doesn't want to go into Afghanistan or ramp up fights in Syria to go after this group. Therefore, Putin isn't going to let a couple of hundred Russian civilian casualties undermine his personal goal of taking Ukraine. And Medusa sources say that the Kremlin has instructed Russian state-funded and pro-government media outlets to emphasize the possible traces of Ukrainian involvement in this attack. Margarita Simonian, who is a Putin propagandist, said flat out, it is not ISIS. They are all Ukrainians. Under this false flag theory, we have the weirdness that is Putin in the face of a mountain of evidence saying that it was ISIS, himself saying it was Ukraine and making the Russian media parrot that it was Ukraine. And if this was a false flag attempt at blaming Ukraine, it has been badly bungled by the Kremlin. Why not parade actual Ukrainians out? Why is ISIS saying over and over it was them? However, I can't get past the fact that this is not the MO of ISIS and the payout is weirdly small. Also, how does this happen in a city that is so heavily surveilled and then this attack was allowed to happen for so long with little police response? I'm not sure. As for the Ukrainian angle, there's no strategic value in shooting up a concert for Ukraine. Executing such an attack does nothing for their ultimate goal of removing Russia from their territory, and if in fact the West discovered Ukraine was behind this, they would be disgusted and Ukraine would most likely stop receiving support and aid from these Western nations. Furthermore, it's just a waste of resources. Ukraine wants to destroy Russia's war-making capacity, not kill random people. The timing is off on this as well. Were Ukraine to do this, they would have done it before the election to undermine Putin's air of total control and security. With all of that being said, Occam's razor leads me to believe that this was an ISIS attack, and that the US told Russia it was going to happen under the duty to inform policies still in place between the two countries. However, Russia's security apparatus followed Putin's lead by ignoring and even publicly condemning the US for suggesting such a thing. Then when it actually happened, Putin couldn't admit the US was right about the ISIS attack after condemning the US and saying that the US is wrong, and then also look like a fool for missing or at worst not taking action in the face of the worst terrorist attack in decades in Russia. So he has to, of course, blame the common enemy here, the boogeyman that is Ukraine, and force everyone in his sphere of influence to do the same. Otherwise, Russia may just begin to see how naked Putin really is.